A knight charges into battle, full plate armor, shield raised, sword drawn. He's faced cavalry, archers, and infantry. He survived a dozen battles. Then he sees it. A soldier with a crossbow points it at him. There's a flash, a crack. The knight falls, dead. Before we explore the weapon so terrifying that the Pope himself banned it, answer today's question of the day. Would you rather be incredibly strong or incredibly accurate? Drop your answer in the comments. We want to know. Now let's dive into the story of the crossbow, the forbidden weapon that terrified entire empires and destroyed the medieval social order. Let's begin. The year is 1139. Pope Innocent II issues a papal decree at the Second Lateran Council. The crossbow is forbidden. Christian armies cannot use it against other Christians. The penalty is excommunication, eternal damnation. This isn't just religious preference. This is existential panic from the ruling class. Because the crossbow does something no weapon has done before, it makes training irrelevant and destroys the aristocratic monopoly on violence. To understand why this weapon caused such terror, we need to understand what came before it. Medieval warfare is dominated by two types of fighters: heavily armored knights and longbow archers. Knights train from age 7. Riding, swordsmanship, lance work, battlefield tactics. By the time they're adults, they've spent 15 years becoming professional warriors. They're expensive to train, expensive to equip, and they form the military elite. The longbow is equally demanding. An archer starts training as a child, building the muscle and technique to draw a war bow that requires over 100 pounds of pull strength. It takes a decade to create a competent longbow archer. This means professional soldiers, expensive to train and maintain, creating a natural barrier to entry that keeps military power in the hands of the aristocracy. Then the crossbow appears, and it changes everything. A crossbow doesn't require years of training. You can teach someone to use it effectively in a week. Point at target, pull trigger, reload using a mechanical crank or lever. That's it. A peasant conscript with 3 days of training can kill a knight who's trained since childhood. The bolt punches through plate armor at close range. The weapon doesn't care about social class, divine right, or years of martial training. It kills aristocrats as easily as commoners. This is why the Pope bans it. Not because it's inhumane. Medieval warfare is brutal regardless of weapon. Not because it kills too efficiently. War is supposed to kill, but because it democratizes violence. It breaks the fundamental assumption of feudal society that military power belongs to those born into the warrior class. If any farmer can pick up a crossbow and kill a lord, what happens to the social order? What happens to the divine right of kings when a commoner's bolt can punch through a nobleman's chest? The ban fails completely and immediately. Within decades, every European army is using crossbows extensively. Why? Because when your enemies have them, you either adopt them or lose. Crossbowmen prove devastatingly effective in battle after battle. At the siege of Acre during the Third Crusade, crossbowmen decimate Muslim cavalry. At the Battle of Arsuf in 1191, Genoese crossbowmen protect Richard the Lionheart's infantry from Saladin's horse archers. The weapon is too effective to abandon for moral or religious reasons. Papal decrees can't stop military evolution when survival is at stake. But the social consequences are exactly what the aristocracy feared. Crossbows enable mass armies of common soldiers who can challenge knightly dominance. City-states like Genoa and Venice build professional crossbowman corps drawn from the merchant and artisan classes. These citizen soldiers defend their cities against noble armies, winning battles that should be impossible. The Republic of Genoa becomes a Mediterranean power, partly because its crossbowmen can defeat aristocratic cavalry. Swiss crossbowmen and pikemen developed tactics that slaughter feudal armies, contributing to Switzerland's independence from the Holy Roman Empire. The crossbow also changes siege warfare fundamentally. Defenders armed with crossbows can kill attackers from behind fortifications with minimal training. This makes castles and walled cities far more defensible with smaller garrisons. A dozen crossbowmen on a wall can hold off hundreds of attackers. This shifts the balance of power toward defensive warfare and makes conquest more difficult and expensive. Kings find that subduing rebellious nobles or independent cities requires massive investments in siege equipment and time. The crossbow doesn't just kill individual knights, it strengthens the defensive position of anyone behind walls, making centralized authority harder to enforce. Knights adapt, but not happily. Armor becomes heavier and more sophisticated, specifically to resist crossbow bolts. Full plate armor of the 14th and 15th centuries is partly a response to crossbow proliferation. But heavier armor has costs: reduced mobility, increased expense, greater physical demands on the wearer. Knights become slower, more expensive, and more vulnerable to other threats like polearms and firearms. The arms race between crossbows and armor eventually makes knights economically unsustainable. By the 15th century, the crossbow faces competition from an even more revolutionary weapon: the firearm. Early guns are loud, slow to reload, and less accurate than crossbows. But they have one decisive advantage: psychological impact. The noise and smoke terrify horses and inexperienced soldiers. Firearms require even less training than crossbows. You can create a minimally competent musketeer in days. As firearm technology improves, crossbows decline. By the 16th century, most European armies have replaced crossbows with arquebuses and muskets. But the crossbow's legacy endures. It proved that technological innovation could overthrow social hierarchies. It demonstrated that common soldiers with the right tools could defeat aristocratic elites. It showed that rulers couldn't ban weapons that threatened their power if those weapons provided military advantage. Every subsequent military revolution, firearms, artillery, mechanized warfare, follows the pattern the crossbow established. New technology democratizes violence. Old elites resist. Resistance fails. Society transforms. The forbidden weapon that terrified entire empires wasn't terrifying because of how many people it killed. It was terrifying because of who it allowed to kill. The crossbow put lethal power in the hands of peasants, merchants, and common soldiers. It made aristocratic military dominance obsolete. It proved that training and noble birth mattered less than access to effective technology. And it revealed that the social order could be challenged and changed by anyone who picked up the right weapon. Now, before you go, make sure to subscribe if you want more stories about the weapons and technologies that changed history forever. And I want to hear from you. If you were a medieval peasant and someone handed you a crossbow, would you use it to defend your village, or would you refuse out of fear of punishment? Do you think the Pope's ban was about morality or about protecting the power of the ruling class? And in modern times, do you think new technologies still threaten existing power structures the same way the crossbow did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this made you see weapon bans as political control rather than ethical concern, share it with someone who thinks historical restrictions were about preventing violence. Because they weren't. They were about controlling who gets to be violent, and the crossbow proved that control is impossible when survival demands innovation.